Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being the show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously, they've got to find a way to because of the whole, they need the power of more than just Charlie to make this happen. They're trying to find something else that could probably give them the extra juice they need. I even love the whole thing of oh, hey, what about the Philosopher's Stone? And Charles that's as real as Santa. And then they said, whoa, don't say it. Gary's here. And Gary's like, what? I was like, which is weird to say considering the fact is literally everything, a fairy godmother, a unicorn, all the Mithries you took down last season, it's like, and that Santa doesn't exist? Come on. I wonder, is that going to circle back around to something? It might be. We'll have to, ultimately, wait and see in that regard. But I love the whole situation of okay, so we end up finding out that the chalice of Dionysus is at a college because Nate remembers seeing it when he was in college himself. He was in a rival school or whatever. What I loved is it took me rewinding it at first to be like, wait a minute, isn't the dude at the party? I was like, that's freaking Fang from Riverdale. I was like, dude, I love that. That's so cool. I was like, hey, but nevertheless. Obviously, Nate feels like he's in his environment. He's just like, oh, yeah, he's so glad to be back. Because it also works in their favor because at the same time, Lita, they say, oh, yeah, I wanted to go to that. Like, Mom was saying I should, go check out, apply for that school and everything. It's like, well, she doesn't have the money to go there. But Mick is like, yeah, if you want to go there, he's like, I can make it happen. He's like, well, last episode, you literally saw all the money he has stashed away. So I thought that was pretty neat. And I love Ava being like, oh, Lita, maybe you can help me and everything. It's like, could you tell me how to be cool? It's like, yeah, you might not want to wear that suit because it's going to make you look like a narc. So, but I love that she shows up in the mascot outfit and everything, and it's just like, yeah, Legends back to college edition. But I thought, well, to college / back to college for some people, but I thought that was so interesting. And so they basically they end up finding out that the actor who plays Fang, his character in this, I think his name was just Dio, but it's like or Dion, and it's like, oh, because that's actually Dionysus himself. He remembers Charlie. He's like, yo, because they kind of get along. He's kind of like the party animal, and she's kind of a rule breaker. So it's like, oh yeah, of course but obviously Astra, because I love that, obviously they came up with this plan and everything, and I love Astra being like, are you stupid? Why are we coming up with this haphazard ass plan? Which, because she literally brings that up the entire episode, why are we going about it this way when there's other ways we can go about it? It's like, yeah, you could, but they're not as fun. That's not the Legend style of doing things. This is. So it's like, I wouldn't want it any other way. So Astra's all about bump this. She tries to steal the chalice, but it doesn't work because basically he's the only one that can allow you to take the chalice because he has his own set of rules. You have to play by his rules. So, and obviously the whole plan was okay, so we join they join a sorority, in particular Charlie and Astra will join one. And at first, Astra being able to fit in the way she did, I thought was really interesting because it's like, oh, what did you do before college? And she's like, I was in hell. I had a whole bunch of minions kind of serving me, and eventually I started to run the place. And she kind of did that kind of almost what would be the word? It's like a stereotypical Valley Girl voice she kind of does, and the lady running things is kind of oh man, you're actually so cool. And Charlie's honestly, she's like, yeah, I used to be in this pretty cool punk band. It's like punk is not really that group and everything. But then it's like, yeah, she's kicking with her friends, and Astra's actually a whole bunch of rejects if you ask me. And Astra, Charlie was getting pissed at her because Astra's pushing literally everyone's buttons because everyone's like, oh my god, she's literally the worst. But Astra really pushes the buttons this episode. It's oh yeah, you talk about being punk and that you're all against everything, about against the rules, but then you're about, not following the rules, but then you get mad anytime someone doesn't follow your rules, and, you do all this to run away from your actual sisters, but at the end of the day, you're just like them. And then Charlie's like, well, yeah, that's funny coming from you, considering the fact is you were my sister's lapdog, and it's like, yo! Stuff was about to get started, and they broke that special, paddle that belonged to that, sorority and everything. So not only them, but literally everyone at the table got kicked out. So it's okay, what do they do? Once again, Astra's just kind of pissed because she's just kind of this is kind of stupid idea to begin with, but they're like, hey, the way we can get around this is becoming a sorority ourselves and making our own one. So they have to, like, all the rejects that got kicked out along with Astra and Charlie, they go to them. There's a girl who got rejected because, like, well, like, I think, like, her thing was, like, she got kicked off a squad or whatever because she was too energetic. The other girl was kind of an influencer. Well, no, because I love that Ava's the one that goes after, her name's Inez, and it's just like, okay, we would like to, she's like, cool. And she's like, wait, you don't even know, it's okay, I know, it's all right. It's like, okay, like, you're super energetic and everything. And then there's the second one, she was, like, because she snorted. And it's like, oh, it's when you sneeze, and and Sarah's like, we don't have to, let's slowly bring Astra back into the world of how things work. And I love that the entire time, it's like Zari is on her phone, like, and they're literally sitting across from each other, and they're texting each other. And I love they're using GIFs and emojis. And it's like, one of them was Bimo, and it was Bimo specifically from the fight from season 3's finale. Like, it was that, I'm like, how the hell it's like when you think about it too much, because you're like, how the hell is that a GIF? But it just, once again, you're thinking about it too much. It's supposed to be just a gag, but I loved that. I was like, oh, that's super cool. And it's just like, and they fitting. It's like, well, Zari being an influencer, reaching out to another influencer, of course. And it took actually Astra and Charlie reaching out to Sylvia. In particular, Astra is actually kind of what inspired her, because she's like, hey, like, because Sylvia's kind of very much like against the system of things, which even, Astra kind of convinced her by being like, hey, like, maybe by playing their game, you kind of lull them into a false sense of security, and you basically can control them. So she took a little bit of her evil way of doing things and kind of applied it to this situation. I thought it was kind of an interesting thing, too, because the house they had set up, they basically used the rundown place, and they just opened a portal to Constantine's place. And there was this line I thought was interesting. He's like, I can't believe I let you convince me to do this. And then Zari says, like, oh, yeah, it's not my fault that you basically, like... Basically, she kind of plays into what Astra brought up last episode about how, like, oh, like, John, you think you have him wrapped around your finger. And this episode kind of hints to that. And even John kind of looking at her, like, it's just like there's a little bit of something there. It's like, it's kind of what I thought. And once again, it adds a complicated thing of, like, obviously Nate knows that him and Zari were together in another time in life. Obviously the Zari that's inside the totem, but then what does that mean for this version of Zari, who her and Constantine might have a thing, so that complicates things all on its own. I didn't talk about it, but I did like Astra's initial plan, because she was like, okay, like, what we're going to do is basically she was finding out a way to murder everyone. And they're like, we'll find a less murdery way to handle this situation. But yeah, slowly but surely, like, we see like a montage, like they put up a video of their sorority, and I love that literally the entire time you look at Astra, she's not smiling, she's just kind of going with the flow motions of things. Like, obviously you see Sarah teaching all the girls, like, to throw, like, one of the knives was hazing, the other one was one of them was mandatory pink, and then like I think it was like drunk bro parties or something like that. And so I was like, holy shit. And so it's just kind of like I thought it was kind of nice, because like that montage kind of represented like a little bit, like obviously like Zari and kind of having one, like that was what Sarah brought to the table, and then Zari, you saw what she brought to the table, and it kind of almost on kind of like a catwalk. So it's kind of a little bit of like badassery and finesse kind of all coming in together. I just thought that was really nice. And the crazy thing about it is that Astra actually started kind of feeling better about it. Like, she actually seemed like she was having fun. I love that. And even Charlie's like, loom or no loom, it seems like some things have changed. And Astra's like, don't get it twisted, I could basically still stab you in the head with a stiletto. But like, she was starting to kind of feel the vibe of this whole situation, because Sylvia was thanking her, because like she never really had a place to kind of belong, but this new place kind of made her finally feel like she had one. And you could tell the same thing was kind of happening with Astra too. At the same time, beforehand, like, we're not even talking about, like, Mick is showing, like, with Lita, checking out the college and everything, and they're like, oh yeah, like, at first, because she has to pretend, like, because the dude's like, oh yeah, what extracurriculars did you do beforehand? And she's like, oh, I did this and that, but like, it's, because it's like, these are like the person she's talking to, the dude's like hoity-toity, his like his dad's from a like big, like, he comes from a big, powerful and rich family. I even love when Mick was like, they're like, oh, you know a lot about architecture. Where'd you study? He was like, Iron Heights. And they're like, oh, I've never heard of that before. It's like, yeah, it's a super prestigious like art school or whatever. It's like, and Lita's like, just go with it. But when they're walking, Nate shows up and everything. Like I said, this is his environment and everything. And Mick was just kind of like, oh yeah, like this is Lita's dad. And they're like, what? And then he's like, yeah, just go with it. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And so Nate is walking with Lita, and like, you know, Dionysus is like, yo, someone look at the party. He's like, what? Yeah. He's like, well, be cool, be cool. And Lita's like, yeah. He's like, no, come on, shut up. And it's like, yo, yeah. And just like, oh, yeah, like, I would love the party, but bro got responsibilities. But Lita's like, come on, we can do this. Like, you can infiltrate the place, and I can find out where the chalice is. And then Nate's like, okay, but promise me your dad won't burn me, like, after this. And she's like, deal. And I was like, but she can't necessarily make that promise. But I guess she's got a little sway over Mick, so maybe. But he's kind of enjoying it. I even love the whole thing of like them having like the paddle. They're like, dude, we don't even do this anymore. He's like, I got this. They're like, okay. And they smashed it against him. He steeled up and broke it. And he's like, whoa. They're like, whoa, it's like his ass is made out of steel. And he's like, hey, because it is. Because they love the whole like shotgun Nate thing. It's like he's reliving his glory days a little bit. But then he gets put under a spell by Dionysus. And I thought it was interesting because he was so, at the moment he found out like what Charlie and them were really up to about the loom and everything, I was wondering like why he'd stand in their way. I mean, I guess they're only using it enough to do what they want to do. But to be fair, it's that type of situation of probably like once you get started, you probably start thinking, well, why stop there? You can change other things here and there. I mean, because you'd probably be able to change a lot of stuff that you wouldn't have been able to change before. I mean, Sarah was always trying to find a time travel way to kind of fix certain things. But it's like, well, you could always bring your sister back. But it's like, well, there's already a... I mean, much like why Oliver didn't ever bring back their Laurel, because there's already a Laurel who deserves just as much as a chance to kind of live a life. So, like, you know, obviously that's not something Sarah's really aiming for anymore, but obviously that, you know, that could be a thought. But it's just like, I'm sure the power of the loom would seduce you, be like, oh, well, just change one more thing, and one more thing, and then you start turning into that thing of, you know, but that's his fear of, like, it's like a thing of, like, because for him, he enjoys the, like, the gods not being around anymore, because now it's just like, you get to party it up, there's so much free will and everything, and it gives him an opportunity to just kind of party up and have so many people with him and everything. So I just thought that was such an interesting aspect. And so for him, he wants to kind of bust up their party and everything, so he makes it so that they can't participate. And obviously it's like, okay, we're gonna have to find another way. But Astra is pissed because for her it's like she saw you guys make it seem like, oh, this is a sisterhood, but she's like, I know what you guys like, the way you look at me like I'm a bad guy, like you made me feel like I'm supposed to fit in and stuff, but this isn't a real sisterhood because you don't really listen to what I have to say, my plans and stuff like that. To be fair, your plans are very murdery based, so Astra's about going at it alone. And she's about to burn the place down, but the Charlie's like, whoa, because Astra's thought is like, oh, you guys want me to change and fit the mode of more like what you want me to be. And it's like, I guess to a certain extent you can understand like why she would feel that way. But even Charlie's like, no, you don't have to change. She's like, look at me. Like, I was a punk when I first joined the Legend, and the fact is I felt like I could break every rule, and it's like that aspect of me hasn't changed, but I found like I can survive without having to murder people. So like you can still be you without having to change. And she's like, the fact of the matter is I'm not going to put on a moose suit, and I'm not going to show up I don't have to show up at your meetings and stuff like that, like the like group huddles and stuff like that. And Charlie was like, no, you know, even if you don't, you'll still be a part of the, you know, you'll still find your place here. Because even I was like, the moment she said that, I was like, you mean being Mick? I mean, you like not wanting to get all like friendly and teamy and stuff like that. I mean, I'm like, that's literally what Mick does. Mick doesn't show up to the team meetings and stuff like that. You know, once again, we barely see Mick participate. He's just kind of always off doing his own thing. So it's like, I'm like, you are literally among like the perfect company, because like he's literally off just kind of doing his own thing sometimes too. So he never gets caught up in all of that. But again, once again, it's that thing of like, I also love Nate's like, oh yeah, like the fact of the matter is I'm also here to tell you that like there's some important information about like, oh, Dionysus is only able to keep this going as long as his followers, you know, are strong behind him. He's like, I don't know why I told you that, but there was some part of me that felt like that was like something really important. So there was a little bit of Nate inside being like, oh yeah, there's some important information. Don't remember why it's important, but oh, here it is. And so Charlie had the idea of like his followers are what gives him his strength. So it's like if we can like overthrow the party and everything, it's just like, you know how we do that. And Astra's like, oh, don't tell me. He's like, we throw an even bigger party than him. And even she's like, really? She's like, what is wrong with you people? Once again, it's like you guys are finding the most like roundabout way to handle this situation. And it's like, yes, because that's what the legends do, baby. You know, so I love that. And her just being so exasperated by the whole thing. She's like, just kind of like fine. But you can also tell she is having fun, probably quality fun she hasn't had in such a long time. So I thought that was pretty dope. And so it's like but the part, like, even though they did all the things they were supposed to, no one actually showed up at a party. But then Charlie's like, yeah, that's exactly it. We did what we were supposed to. How about we kind of go against the grain? And Astra, it's up to you. She's like, all right, this is where we step into Sabotageville. So slowly but surely, the fact of the matter is they're, disrupting, the party. Having Nate, it was Charlie disguised as Nate, pulling Dionysus away. Zari hacks the music and gets rid of it. I even love when it was all said and done, Zari's like, yes, sorry about this, bro. We're still cool, right? And locks him in there with his beer, and like basically Mick had burned it, so like they ran out of beer. I should really quickly interject by being, I'll go ahead and finish the whole thing. So little by little, and it's like, hey, major party over here, but your boy Dionysus won't give up because he's still got a strong enough squad who believes in him, who worship him, who are followers, that including Nate under his spell and everything. To be fair, because even Lita was like, do you have a man crush on him? Maybe you should let him know you have a man crush on him, because like he was super like, oh my god, like Dionysus is the coolest dude ever, so it's like he was already there, so it probably didn't take too much to enchant him. But the fact of the matter is, Sarah challenges him to beer pong, and even Ava being like, aren't you're blind? She's like, I played a whole bunch of beer pong in my day, plus superpowers and everything, right? So her and Dionysus shake, and she's like, I got this, and she proceeds to demolish him, and it's like, yeah, which is kind of pretty badass, because immediately, I was thinking about it last episode, but I didn't bring it up. It's like, she like, especially when she backflip kicked that Hellhound, it's like, she super went Daredevil right there. And it's like, even more so in this case. I don't know. It's super badass seeing her wear the shades all the time too. And her just killing it at the game. And it's like, yo. And even when it was all said and done, the spell was broken. Because Nate was like, come on, dude. You got to admit, she killed it. And so they're celebrating. It's like, Astra, go ahead and say it. Astra's like, you're not going to get me to say it. And Nate's like, I'm going to say it. Sisterhood. And everybody hugs. I'm like, yeah. Mick was able to get the cup, and it's like, yeah, I got the cup, and everyone's like, yeah. And then Lita's like, best parent weekend or whatever, father-daughter weekend. I was like, oh, and he's like tapping her, kind of being affectionate, and she's holding her head down, kind of a little embarrassed and happy. I was like, look at that, that's so cute. Because I love that, like, there's that moment where Lita finally catches up with her dad earlier in the episode, and he's like, look at this. Like, basically the building doesn't say that dude's name and family name anymore. It says Rory Hall. And she's like, how'd you do that? He's like, I went back in time and made, like, a donation. So now, now you have a better time fitting in. But for her, she's like, oh. Because, like, it's a sad thing of, like, they both thought each other, like, he's like, oh, I thought you were embarrassed by me. She's like, what? No, like, you're cool. And she's like, I thought you were embarrassed by me. He's like, no, like, he's like, you're awesome. Why would I be? But it's because for her, it's like, she only made it through high school because she was surrounded by, like, people, like, where she never really fit in. And so for her, kind of people like that. So, like, being at the college just kind of reminded her of that. She was hoping to come to college to, find a place that she could actually fit in, kind of pave her own way, which obviously it's very, like, a very Mick thing, because it's like Mick kind of forged his own way. Even with a part of the Legends, he's with them, but obviously he still kind of does his own thing. Once again, he's kind of one of the only, like, pseudo anti-hero bad guys of the group and everything. Obviously, you have, Astra here now, but you get what I'm trying to say. So it was just this heartwarming moment of just like him being like, oh, she doesn't have to, like, she's got more to her than anyone else at that school, so she doesn't have to try and fit in, that she's like better than everyone. So I was like, oh, that was like such a like sweet loving moment between. It's like, oh, like that father-daughter relationship is really kicking in and play. I mean, once again, this whole thing is very interesting because like the whole them starting a sorority for rejects is very befitting, because who are the Legends themselves? Literally a haphazard group of rejects, and it's just it's the meta of it in its entirety, whether it's the Legends being who they are, this sorority they started, Mick and Lita kind of feeling like they never found their place, or like, yeah, they're like, everyone's a reject, and I love it. I mean, Astra found her place, she's a reject amongst them too, so it's just the beauty of it all kind of working out like that. So I thought that was pretty dope. And the girls are saying like, oh yeah, like even though you guys are leaving, like the fact of the matter is this is an important place, like a place where people don't have to feel like they have to dress a certain way or act a certain way. This is where people can discover who they are. So they're going to keep the sorority going without them. And I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like, yeah, stay away from drugs and stuff like that. Yeah, don't do it. And it's like, oh, like it like the, you know, because it was even something Charlie had said, like if we were going to use the loom, they needed to kind of be like in sync. And this is a situation that's like, if we had to put it in certain categories, S links went up this episode, especially between Charlie and Astra, but everyone in Astra. So I think that was, you know, pretty dope. And so Dionysus accepting defeat is like, you know what, I got it. Like, you know, it's like, go ahead. Because Charlie's like, well, this is kind of a lot of pressure, like, you know, having that God power, even if it's just for like 24 hours. So all of them, everyone takes a drink of it. So everyone's glowing with the God power and everything. It's like, whoa, this is pretty dope. And so that was pretty neat. But as Astra was going back inside, like she runs into the eldest of the Fates, Lachesis. I think I'm terrible with names. Kothos, Lachesis, and Astropo. I think I'm probably butchering those still, but regardless, it's like, oh, you asked me to kill John for you, and I told you there would come a day where you owe me a debt. Well, I'm calling in the chips now. It's like, I was thinking she was going to manipulate her in the sense of like, yeah, I've got your, no, like, work with me and we can do this, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, no, because, you know, Lachesis already made it clear, like, oh, like, she's like, oh, that bringing back your mom thing, oh, that's so human, don't even think about it, you're a god now. But it's like, I think it's a situation of like, it's kind of like you are in her debt, like hell bonds are probably like a thing of like, oh, you saying I have your word that you're in my debt, it means probably a physical thing that you, so you're kind of bound by your word. So she's probably going to have to end up betraying the legends, even though she became so close to them, and that's going to damage their relationship. Either way, they've got the God juice now, so the whole thing is like, okay, so what are we going to do? What is Astra going to do for her, you know, in the grand scheme of things? I'm really interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.